So could you take me to like maybe a day, and I don't know how fast you think progress will go, but if we say there's like an adoption of the tools that you're maybe most excited about or that you'd like to see in the world, like, 2 decades from now, like how will an individual researcher's life or maybe a research group's life change? Like what kind of tools or what kind of like processes will they go through compared to nowadays? Maybe you could start there and extrapolate.
Yeah, so I think, yeah, to start now, I think the issue today is that there's quite a big gap between, for example, what communities would like to see happen for themselves across many different types of communities. So if you imagine like patient communities that want to see a medicine being developed for them in multiple different areas and so on, it can be quite difficult to find the path for how, as someone who is a layperson in that community, to actually have agency towards making that happen. And on the other side of that, you have researchers who have to navigate very, and then this is very often stated in DeSci, but they have to navigate very complex bureaucracies in order to get the funding that they need to pursue solutions that might be what these communities are looking for. So there's like a
Mhm.
fundamental, like a very deep inefficiency and misalignment in how that process is handled today, which is arguably because the legacy systems that are used to coordinate it simply aren't quite up to the task of handling the complexity that we have today. So, with that in mind, I think what's so exciting and the rate of progress, I think, could be just quite extraordinary because you now have, for example, DAOs being examples of communities coming together with shared goals, having ways to pool funding to realize those goals. And then when you combine that with AI empowered researchers who can then basically work towards finding those solutions more efficiently than ever, you are creating a far more efficient system where you then have goals that they can work towards and you have tooling that helps those people working towards it work even faster. And a core element of this, and this is one of the things we've been working a lot on, especially with organizations in the space, are the coordination graph and information models that basically allows people to collaborate towards those goals efficiently. And so that mixture coming together, I think, means that there will be just an exponential acceleration towards making a lot of things that we've previously seen as impossible possible in terms of new medicines and new types of technologies. So that the day what it becomes quite interesting is depending on the rate of that increase is that the day to day of a researcher or a scientist, I mean, 2 decades ahead, in the end, it might come down to effectively decision making and resource allocation because the systems that you almost become like a conductor of these systems that can then aggregate evidence and run experiments and so on. So that really what it boils down to is what future do we want to see? And I think that's where you'll have individuals involved in those networks who will be kind of help in conducting those orchestras, to put it that way.
Where are people right now maybe scared to go in DeSci or like kind of prevent? What are people maybe scared to work on? What's underexplored, you would say?
Yeah, so I mean, it's an interesting question. I mean, framed in the context of DeSci, I think so more broadly from a societal perspective, obviously, like with seeing what's now possible in terms of, for example, these new AI capabilities and what does that mean for the world, it raises a lot of questions. But I think what's exciting from the DeSci perspective is that I think it can give a lot of answers for how to responsibly make use of this and have, those voting mechanisms that are enabled in the space. So I feel like, and the other interesting aspect is that DeSci also allows you to pursue those areas of science that historically have been underserved by kind of the old funding methods. So in a way, it's almost like it's almost difficult to say what DeSci is currently holding back from pursuing because it often is pursuing very much on the frontier of things. So I guess maybe the way I would frame the answer would probably be that it's more how to tackle the challenges of how to get alignment in this space and what are ways if you have an inherently decentralized framing, what are the how do we as a community enable some level of governance across that we have shared values around and what's the best way to do that. That's probably the challenge that I'd say is there, but people are, I think, actively now trying to address that. But maybe the scary bit can be that it's kind of can sometimes be an elephant in the room how to handle all these different opinions, to put it that
Yeah.
way.
If you've been following kind of that issue and how people are responding to it in the past of like how do you actually, like govern a fundamentally decentralized system, what have been like some appealing to you answers or like most promising kind of like yeah ways to address that?
Yeah, so I think trying to work towards a world where you have kind of a pluralistic view on these things as much as possible. So enabling multiple communities to coexist with different value mechanisms as well. How you create an environment where you can share knowledge and share learnings as they come, but at the same time not need to all agree on the exact same way of doing things. I think that's really kind of a founding mindset that I think could be beneficial to enable kind of coexistence without saying we all need to do this thing in this one way, because that then can quickly lead to recreating the old way, to put it that way. So I think structures that encourage pluralistic approaches are the ones that kind of stand out to me as being very interesting. And I mean, if you look at the work that Gitcoin, for example, has been doing in terms of quadratic funding and like the evolution of those voting mechanisms and how that can help ensure that resources are allocated across a plurality of projects and so on. Like I think those are the ones that stand out to me as being kind of interesting solutions.